The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The small town buzzed with its usual evening rhythm. Kids playing on sidewalks, neighbors chatting over fences, and cars moving slowly through the narrow streets. Maya Johnson, a 32-year-old black woman with a warm smile and tired eyes, had just finished her shift at the local grocery store. She worked long hours stocking shelves and helping customers, but she didn't mind. It gave her a sense of purpose, knowing that she was providing for her two children, 8-year-old Jamal and 5-year-old Tia. Maya climbed into her old sedan, turning the key in the ignition. As the engine sputtered to life, she glanced at herself in the rearview mirror. Her dark hair was pulled back into a tight bun, and there were faint lines of exhaustion under her eyes. Still, she smiled softly. She loved her family deeply, and no matter how hard things got, she always found strength in them. Tonight, like every night, she reminded herself that tomorrow would be better. She drove carefully along the quiet roads, her thoughts drifting to dinner plans and homework assignments waiting for her at home. Maybe she'd make spaghetti, her kids' favorite, or perhaps they'd settle for sandwiches if she didn't have enough energy to cook. Either way, she imagined the laughter and chatter that filled their tiny apartment when everyone came together after a long day. That thought alone kept her going, even when the world felt heavy. But as she approached an intersection, red and blue lights suddenly flashed behind her. Maya's heart skipped a beat. She checked her speedometer. She wasn't speeding. She signaled and pulled over to the side of the road, rolling down her window as she waited for the officer to approach. The cool breeze carried the scent of freshly cut grass, but it did little to calm her nerves. Something about this moment felt off. The officer stepped out of his patrol car, his boots crunching against the gravel. He walked toward her slowly, one hand resting casually on the gun holstered at his side. Maya swallowed hard, forcing herself to breathe steadily. "License and registration," he said gruffly, leaning down to peer into her car. "Of course, officer," Maya replied, keeping her voice calm and respectful. She reached into her purse for her wallet, then leaned across the seat to grab the registration papers from the glove compartment. But before she could hand them over, the officer interrupted her. "What's your hurry?" he asked sharply, narrowing his eyes. "Why are you driving so late?" "I work late shifts at the grocery store," Maya explained, holding up her employee badge as proof. "I'm just heading home." The officer studied her documents briefly before handing them back. Instead of letting her go, however, he began asking more questions. Where was she coming from? Where was she going? Did she have anything illegal in the car? Each question felt heavier than the last, laced with suspicion and judgment. Maya answered patiently, trying to keep her tone polite despite the growing unease in her chest. Then, without warning, the officer called for backup. Within minutes, another patrol car screeched to a halt behind hers. Two more officers emerged, their presence making the situation feel even more tense. One of them gestured for Maya to step out of the vehicle while the others began searching her car. They rummaged through her belongings, tossing aside groceries, rifling through papers, and inspecting every corner of the interior. "Is this really necessary?" Maya asked, her voice trembling slightly. "I haven't done anything wrong." "No," one responded. The officers ignored her protests, treating her like a suspect rather than a citizen. When nothing incriminating turned up, frustration seemed to boil over into aggression. One cop grabbed her arm roughly, pulling her toward the hood of the car. "Don't move," he growled, pressing her body against the cold metal surface. Another snapped handcuffs around her wrists, tightening them until they dug painfully into her skin. Tears streamed down Maya's face as panic set in. "Please," she cried, struggling against their grip. "You're hurting me." "I didn't do anything." Her pleas fell on deaf ears. The officers ignored her cries, speaking amongst themselves in low tones. Maya couldn't understand what they were saying, but she could feel the disdain radiating from them. It wasn't about whether she was guilty or innocent, it was about power, control, and the color of her skin. In that moment, trapped beneath the weight of systemic racism and unchecked authority, Maya realized she couldn't stay silent anymore. As the officers shoved her into the back seat of a patrol car, Maya clenched her fists tightly. Fear still gripped her heart, but beneath it burned a flicker of defiance. This wasn't just about her, it was about every black person who had ever been treated unfairly because of the color of their skin. And though she didn't know it yet, this incident would become the catalyst for something much bigger. For now, all she could do was sit in silence, staring out the window as the familiar streets of her neighborhood blurred past. The sun had dipped below the horizon, leaving the world cloaked in darkness. But somewhere deep inside, Maya resolved not to let this injustice define her. Somehow, some way, she would fight back, and she wouldn't stop until her voice was heard. The police station was cold and sterile, a place where hope seemed to vanish the moment you stepped inside. Maya sat on a hard metal bench in a dimly lit holding cell, her wrists still throbbing from the tight handcuffs. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across the room. She hugged her knees to her chest, trying to make herself as small as possible. Her mind raced with questions she couldn't answer. Why is this happening? What did I do wrong? Will anyone believe me? Tears rolled down her cheeks as she replayed the events of the night in her head. She thought about how quickly everything had spiraled out of control. The flashing lights, the aggressive questioning, the rough handling by the officers. None of it made sense. She hadn't broken any laws, yet here she was, locked up like a criminal. The injustice of it all weighed heavily on her heart, making it hard to breathe. Time seemed to stretch endlessly. Hours passed, but no one came to check on her or explain why she was being detained. The silence was deafening, broken only by the occasional clinking of keys or distant voices echoing through the hallway. Maya felt utterly alone. She closed her eyes and tried to focus on something, anything, that could bring her comfort. Her children's faces appeared in her mind, smiling and laughing like they always did when she walked through the door after work. Thinking about them gave her a sliver of strength, but it also brought fresh waves of guilt. How would they react when they found out their mother had been arrested? Would they be scared? Confused? Finally, a guard approached her cell and told her she was allowed one phone call. Maya's heart leapt at the news. She followed him to a small booth near the front desk where an old rotary phone sat perched on a narrow counter. With trembling hands, she dialed her sister Jasmine's number. The phone rang twice before Jasmine picked up. Hello? Jasmine's voice sounded sleepy, but alertness kicked in immediately when she heard Maya's shaky tone. Maya, is that you? They arrested me, Maya whispered, barely able to get the words out. Her voice cracked under the weight of emotion. For no reason, Jasmine gasped. What? Where are you? Are you okay? I'm at the station, Maya replied, tears streaming down her face again. They pulled me over, searched my car, and then they just threw me in here. I don't know what's going to happen. Don't worry, Jasmine said firmly, though her own voice trembled slightly. I'll figure this out. I'll call a lawyer and get you out of there as soon as possible. Just hold on, okay? Maya nodded, even though Jasmine couldn't see her. Okay, she managed to say before hanging up. For the first time since the ordeal began, she felt a tiny spark of hope. Knowing that someone was fighting for her gave her the courage to face whatever came next. Hours later, Maya was finally released pending charges, a vague accusation of suspicious behavior that left her feeling both angry and defeated. As she walked out of the station, blinking against the bright morning sunlight, she vowed not to let this incident crush her spirit. If anything, it ignited a fire within her, a determination to stand up against the unfair treatment she'd endured. Over the next few days, Maya leaned heavily on her family for support. Jasmine wasted no time finding a skilled civil rights attorney named Mr. Carter, who specialized in cases involving police misconduct. During their first meeting, Maya recounted every detail of her arrest, leaving nothing out. Mr. Carter listened intently, his expression growing darker with each passing minute. This isn't just about you, he said gravely once Maya finished speaking. It's about systemic racism and abuse of power. We need to fight this, not just for your sake, but for everyone else who has suffered because of it. Those words resonated deeply with Maya. She realized that her experience wasn't unique. Countless others had faced similar injustices and remained silent out of fear or despair. But Maya refused to be silenced. With Mr. Carter's guidance, she began documenting everything: the names of the officers involved, the exact sequence of events, even photographs of the bruises on her wrists. Every piece of evidence mattered, no matter how small. As word spread about her arrest, the community rallied around her. Friends, neighbors, and even strangers reached out to offer their support. Some shared their own stories of mistreatment by law enforcement, while others encouraged Maya to keep fighting. Inspired by their solidarity, Maya decided to share her story publicly. She posted about her experience on social media, detailing the humiliation and fear she'd endured. Within hours, her post went viral, sparking outrage and calls for accountability. Local news outlets picked up the story, shining a spotlight on the systemic issues plaguing law enforcement in the area. Protesters gathered outside the police department, holding signs that read, "Justice for Maya" and "End police brutality." Reporters interviewed Maya, giving her a platform to speak directly to the public. Though the attention was overwhelming, it also filled her with a sense of purpose. For the first time in her life, Maya found herself thrust into the role of an activist. Despite the growing momentum, there were moments when doubt crept in. Late at night, lying awake in bed, Maya wondered if she was strong enough to see this, fight through. What if the system crushed her efforts, just like it had crushed so many others before her? What if nothing changed, despite all her sacrifices? These thoughts haunted her, threatening to extinguish the flame of hope she'd worked so hard to nurture. But whenever those fears surfaced, Maya looked at her children. Jamal and Tia were too young to fully understand what was happening, but they could sense their mother's pain. They clung to her more tightly than usual, seeking reassurance that everything would be all right. Seeing their innocent faces reminded Maya why she had to keep going. She wanted them to grow up in a world where they wouldn't have to face the same injustices she had endured. She wanted them to live without fear, knowing that their voices mattered. With renewed resolve, Maya threw herself into the fight. She attended rallies, spoke at community meetings, and collaborated with local organizations advocating for police reform. Each step forward was challenging, but it also brought her closer to the justice she sought. Along the way, she discovered a resilience she never knew she had, a strength born from love, pain, and an unshakable belief in the possibility of change. Though the road ahead remained uncertain, Maya faced it with her head held high. She had started this journey as a victim, but she was determined to finish it as a survivor, and perhaps someday, a victor. Maya woke up one morning feeling a strange mix of exhaustion and determination. The sun filtered through the thin curtains of her apartment, casting golden streaks across the worn carpet. Her children were still asleep in their room, their soft, breathing a comforting reminder of why she was fighting so hard. But as she stood by the window sipping a cup of lukewarm coffee, Maya couldn't shake the weight of everything that had happened. The arrest, the protests, the media attention. It all felt like a whirlwind pulling her in different directions. Yet deep down she knew this fight wasn't just about her anymore. It was about every person who had ever been treated unfairly because of the color of their skin. With Jasmine's help, Maya had hired Mr. Carter, a seasoned civil rights attorney, known for his relentless pursuit of justice. Together, they filed a formal complaint against the officers involved in her arrest. Maya provided detailed accounts of what had happened, including photographs of her bruised wrists and copies of the police report. Mr. Carter assured her that these documents would form the foundation of their case, but he also warned her that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. "These systems are built to protect themselves," he said during one of their meetings. "But we're going to chip away at them, piece by piece." Determined not to leave any stone unturned, Maya began gathering evidence beyond her own testimony. She reached out to friends and acquaintances, asking if anyone else had experienced similar treatment from the same officers. To her surprise, several people came forward with stories eerily similar to hers: unnecessary stops, invasive searches, and blatant displays of disrespect. One woman recounted how an officer had mocked her accent during a routine traffic stop, while another described being handcuffed and detained without explanation. These testimonies added layers to Maya's case, painting a clearer picture of systemic misconduct. Word of Maya's efforts spread quickly throughout the community. People rallied around her, organizing protests outside the police department and demanding accountability. Signs reading "Justice for Maya" and "Black Lives Matter" filled the streets, carried by men, women, and even children. Local activists joined forces with national organizations, amplifying Maya's story and turning it into a symbol of resistance against police brutality. Reporters flocked to the town, eager to cover the growing movement. For the first time in her life, Maya found herself standing at the center of something much bigger than herself. Despite the support, there were moments when Maya doubted her ability to lead such a massive effort. Activism was new territory for her. She was a mother and a grocery store worker, not someone accustomed to public speaking or navigating complex legal battles. At times, she felt overwhelmed by the responsibility resting on her shoulders. What if she failed? What if her voice wasn't loud enough to make a difference? To cope with these doubts, Maya leaned heavily on her family and friends. Jasmine became her rock, attending meetings with Mr. Carter and helping draft press releases. Neighbors brought meals to her house, ensuring she didn't have to worry about cooking after long days of strategizing. Even strangers sent messages of encouragement, reminding her that she wasn't alone in this fight. Their kindness fortified her spirit, giving her the strength to push through even the toughest days. One evening, as Maya scrolled through social media, she stumbled upon a post from a young man named Marcus. He claimed to have witnessed one of the officers involved in her arrest making racist remarks during a previous incident. Intrigued, Maya reached out to him privately, asking for more details. Marcus agreed to meet her at a local cafe the following. When they sat down together, Marcus explained that he'd been pulled over by the same officer months earlier. During the encounter, the cop had made derogatory comments about black people, saying things like, "You folks always cause trouble." Marcus recorded parts of the interaction on his phone, though the audio quality was poor. Still, it was evidence, a tangible piece of proof that could strengthen Maya's case. "This is huge," Maya said, her voice trembling with excitement. "Thank you for coming forward. You have no idea how much this means." Marcus nodded solemnly. "I've seen too. Many people suffer in silence. If sharing my story can help take down someone like him, then I'm willing to do whatever it takes." Over the next few weeks, Maya worked tirelessly to build her case. With Mr. Carter's guidance, she compiled affidavits from witnesses, gathered video footage from nearby surveillance cameras, and reviewed police records for patterns of misconduct. Each discovery fueled her resolve, pushing her closer to the truth. Slowly but surely, the pieces of the puzzle began to fit together. As the momentum grew, Maya faced challenges she hadn't anticipated. Some critics dismissed her claims, accusing her of exaggerating or seeking attention. Others suggested she drop the lawsuit altogether, warning her that taking on the system might ruin her reputation. But Maya refused to back down. Every insult, every threat only strengthened her conviction. She reminded herself daily of the reason she started this journey, to create a better future for her children. One particularly difficult moment came when Jamal asked her why people kept talking about her on TV. His innocent question caught Maya off guard. She hesitated, unsure of how to explain racism and injustice to an 8-year-old. Finally, she knelt beside him and held his hands tightly in hers. "Sometimes, sweetie, people treat others unfairly because of the way they look," she said gently. "But Mommy is working really hard to change that. I want you and your sister to grow up in a world where everyone is treated equally, no matter what they look like." Jamal frowned, processing her words. After a moment, he hugged her tightly. "I'm proud of you, Mommy," he whispered. Tears welled up in Maya's eyes as she hugged him back. In that moment, she realized that her fight wasn't just about holding bad cops accountable. It was about teaching her children the value of standing up for what's right, even when it's hard. The weeks turned into months, and Maya's case gained national attention. News outlets featured interviews with her, highlighting her courage and resilience. Celebrities and politicians voiced their support, calling for reforms in law enforcement practices. While the spotlight brought pressure, It also gave Maya a platform to amplify her message. She spoke at rallies, attended town hall meetings, and collaborated with advocacy groups to push for policy changes. Through it all, Maya remained grounded in her purpose. She knew the fight wouldn't end overnight, but she also knew that every step forward mattered. Whether it was filing a lawsuit, speaking out publicly, or simply supporting others who shared her pain, Maya poured her heart into the movement. And though the journey was far from over, she took solace in knowing that she was planting seeds of change, one act of defiance at a time. By the time autumn arrived, the leaves turning fiery shades of red and orange, Maya stood taller than ever before. She had transformed from a victim into a leader, inspiring countless others to join the fight for justice. Though the battle was far from won, Maya's unwavering determination proved that even in the face of overwhelming odds, one person's voice could spark a revolution. Just as Maya's fight for justice was gaining momentum, life threw her a curveball she never saw coming. One crisp autumn evening, as she sat at the kitchen table reviewing documents with Mr. Carter, there was a knock at the door. Startled, Maya glanced at the clock. It was nearly 9 o'clock. Who could be visiting so late? Her heart raced as she walked to the door, peeking through the peephole before unlocking it. Standing on the other side was Marcus Johnson, her husband. Maya froze, her hand still gripping the doorknob. It had been nearly 3 years since she'd last seen him. Marcus had been serving time in prison for a crime he swore he didn't commit, a robbery he claimed he wasn't even involved in. His absence had left a void in their family, but over time, Maya had learned to cope without him. She focused on raising their children and building a stable life for them, all while silently hoping that someday he'd return. But now here he was standing on her doorstep looking tired but determined. "Maya," Marcus said softly, his voice rough with emotion. "Can I come in?" For a moment Maya hesitated. Seeing him again stirred up a whirlwind of emotions: relief, anger, confusion, and even fear. How would Jamal and Tia react to his sudden reappearance? And what about her lawsuit? Could she trust him to support her, or would his presence complicate things further? Finally, she stepped aside, letting him enter. The air between them was thick with unspoken words. Marcus looked around the apartment, taking in the familiar yet slightly changed surroundings. His eyes lingered on family photos displayed on the wall, capturing moments he hadn't been part of. When he turned back to face Maya, there was guilt etched across his features. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I know I've missed so much, but I'm here now, and I want to help." Maya crossed her arms, studying him carefully. "Help with what?" she asked, her tone guarded. "You don't even know what I've been through these past few months." Marcus nodded, understanding her skepticism. "I heard about your arrest," he admitted. "It's been all over the news. People are talking about you everywhere, even inside. They say you're fighting the cops who mistreated you." Maya raised an eyebrow. "And how do you feel about that?" "I think you're brave," Marcus replied earnestly. "What those officers did to you, it's wrong. And if I can do anything to make sure they pay for it, I will." His words caught Maya off guard. Despite her reservations, she couldn't deny the sincerity in his voice. Still, she needed time to process everything. "We'll talk later," she said finally. "Right now, I have work to do." Over the next few days, Marcus settled into their home, reconnecting with his children and trying to earn Maya's trust. He listened intently as she recounted her ordeal: the arrest, the protests, the media attention, and the ongoing legal battle. His jaw tightened with anger as she described the racist remarks and aggressive behavior of the officers. By the time she finished, Marcus was seething. "We need to take them down," he declared firmly. "Not just for you, but for everyone else they've hurt." Maya appreciated his passion, but she worried about involving him too deeply. Marcus had always been protective, sometimes to a fault. His temper had gotten him into trouble in the past, and she feared it might jeopardize her case. "This isn't about revenge," she reminded him gently. "It's about justice. We have to play this smart." Marcus nodded, though his fists remained clenched. I get it. But we can't let them win. Not after everything they've done. Determined to contribute in meaningful ways, Marcus reached out to old friends and acquaintances from his neighborhood, many of whom had run-ins with law enforcement. Through these connections, he uncovered explosive revelations about the officers involved in Maya's arrest. One man revealed that one of the cops had previously faced disciplinary action for excessive force, but managed to avoid serious consequences. Another shared a leaked recording of the same officer making derogatory comments about black people during a traffic stop. Each piece of evidence added fuel to Maya's case, strengthening her position against the police department. With Marcus's help, Maya and Mr. Carter prepared to file additional motions in court, demanding accountability not just for her arrest, but for years of unchecked misconduct. The stakes were higher than ever, and the pressure mounted with each passing day. Yet having Marcus by her side gave Maya a renewed sense of strength. For the first time in years, she felt like she wasn't carrying the burden alone. As the Yosai trial date approached, tensions ran high. Maya spent countless hours preparing testimonies, rehearsing answers to potential questions, and mentally steeling herself for the emotional toll of reliving her trauma in front of a jury. Marcus stayed by her side throughout, offering encouragement and reminding her why this fight mattered. Together, they attended strategy meetings with Mr. Carter, reviewed evidence, and discussed possible outcomes. But despite their united front, cracks began to show in their relationship. The strain of the past few years weighed heavily on both of them. Maya struggled to reconcile the man standing beside her with the memory of the husband who had disappeared from her life. Meanwhile, Marcus wrestled with feelings of inadequacy, knowing he couldn't undo the years he'd missed. Their conversations often veered into uncomfortable territory, touching on unresolved issues neither of them was ready to confront. One night, as they sat together on the couch after putting the kids to bed, Maya turned to Marcus with tears in her eyes. "I'm glad you're here," she said softly, "but I need you to promise me something." "What is it?" Marcus asked, his expression serious. "Promise me you won't lose control," she said. "No matter what happens in court, or outside of it, you can't let your anger dictate your actions. This case is too important to risk losing because of something reckless." Marcus hesitated, then nodded. "I promise," he said firmly. "I won't let you down." Though Maya wanted to believe him, she couldn't shake the nagging doubt lingering in the back of her mind. Still, she chose to focus on the positives. With Marcus's support, she felt more prepared than ever to face whatever lay ahead. Whether it was testifying in court, addressing reporters, or rallying supporters, Maya tackled each challenge head-on, drawing strength from the love and determination surrounding her. The morning of the trial arrived, bringing with it a mix of anticipation and anxiety. Maya dressed carefully, choosing an outfit that conveyed professionalism and dignity. As she stood in front of the mirror adjusting her blazer, Marcus placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You've got this," he said, his voice steady. "No matter what happens today, remember why you started this fight. You're doing this for our family, for everyone who deserves better." Maya smiled faintly, feeling a surge of gratitude. Though their journey was far from perfect, she knew Marcus's presence gave her an edge. Together they walked out of the apartment, ready to face the world and the courtroom, with courage and resolve. Little did they know the trial would test them in ways they couldn't imagine. But as long as they stood united, Maya believed they could overcome anything. The courtroom buzzed with tension as Maya took her seat beside Mr. Carter. Her hands trembled slightly in her lap, but she forced herself to sit up straight and keep her composure. The room was packed. Friends, family, activists, reporters, and curious onlookers filled every available space. Cameras flashed and pens scribbled furiously as the judge entered, calling the court to order. This was it, the moment Maya had been working toward for months. As the trial unfolded, Maya listened intently as witnesses were called to testify. Some recounted similar experiences of mistreatment by the same officers, while others provided expert analysis on systemic racism within law enforcement. Each story added weight to her case, painting a damning picture of abuse and misconduct. When it was finally her turn to take the stand, Maya felt a wave of nerves wash over her. She glanced at Marcus, who gave her an encouraging nod, and then at Jamal and Tia, sitting quietly in the front row. Their presence steadied her. Under oath, Maya recounted every detail of her arrest: the traffic stop, the invasive questioning, the rough handling, and the humiliation of being handcuffed without cause. Her voice wavered at times, especially when describing how scared she'd felt watching her children's faces flash through her mind during the ordeal. But she refused to let her emotions overwhelm her. With each word, she painted a vivid picture of what it felt like to be treated as less than human, simply because of the color of her skin. The defense attorneys tried to poke holes in her testimony, suggesting that perhaps she had misunderstood the officers' intentions or exaggerated their behavior. They questioned why she hadn't immediately filed a complaint and accused her of seeking publicity, rather than justice. Maya clenched her fists under the table, fighting back tears of frustration. But Mr. Carter stepped in swiftly, redirecting the focus back to the evidence they had gathered: photos, recordings, witness statements, all pointing to a pattern of discriminatory practices. When Maya stepped down from the stand, she felt drained but proud. She had faced her accusers head-on, refusing to back down despite the hostility aimed at her. Marcus met her halfway down the aisle, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "You did great," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Maya managed a small smile, leaning into him for support. The days dragged on as both sides presented their arguments. Closing statements were delivered with passion and urgency. Mr. Carter spoke eloquently about accountability, urging the jury not to see this as just one woman's fight, but as part of a larger movement for justice. He reminded them that their verdict would send a message, not only to the officers involved but to communities everywhere, about whether fairness still mattered. Finally, after hours of deliberation, the jury returned with their decision. The courtroom fell silent as the foreperson stood to announce the verdict: guilty on multiple counts of misconduct and racial profiling. Gasps rippled through the crowd, followed by cheers and applause. Maya sat frozen, unable to process what she'd just heard. It wasn't until Marcus squeezed her hand that reality sank in. Tears streamed down her face as she realized that, against all odds, they had won. The victory brought a mix of relief and vindication, but Maya knew the work wasn't done. While the officers were stripped of their badges and sentenced to serve time in prison, systemic racism couldn't be dismantled overnight. True change required more than punishing individuals. It demanded reforms in policies, training, and accountability measures within law enforcement agencies. Determined to keep pushing forward, Maya threw herself into advocacy work alongside Marcus and other activists. Together, they founded a nonprofit organization called Voices for Justice, dedicated to supporting victims of police brutality and advocating for meaningful reform. Through workshops, community outreach programs, and partnerships with local leaders, Maya and Marcus worked tirelessly to educate people about their rights and empower them to speak out against injustice. Their efforts inspired countless others to join the movement, creating a ripple effect that extended far beyond their small town. Maya also made it a priority to reconnect with her children, ensuring they understood the importance of standing up for what's right. She sat Jamal and Tia down one evening, explaining how their voices mattered even though they were young. "If you ever feel like someone is treating you unfairly," she told them, "don't stay quiet. Speak up, because your words can make a difference." Jamal nodded thoughtfully while Tia hugged her tightly. "I'm proud of you, Mommy," she said softly. Those simple words meant the world to Maya, reminding her that her fight wasn't just about changing systems. It was about building a better future for her family. Life slowly began to settle into a new rhythm. Maya and Marcus worked hard to rebuild their relationship, navigating the challenges of blending old memories with new realities. There were moments of tension, disagreements about how to move forward, but their shared commitment to justice kept them grounded. They leaned on each other during tough times, finding strength in their partnership. One evening, as they sat together on the porch watching the sunset, Maya reflected on how far she'd come since that fateful night. From being trapped by racist cops to standing tall as a symbol of hope, she had transformed pain into purpose. The scars of her experience would always remain, but so too would the lessons she'd learned along the way. "You know," Marcus said, breaking the silence, "you've changed me, Maya. You've shown me what real courage looks like." Maya smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "We've changed each other," she replied, "and we're going to keep changing the world, together." As darkness fell over the neighborhood, Maya felt a sense of peace wash over her. The road ahead remained uncertain, filled with obstacles and challenges yet to come. But she faced it with newfound confidence, knowing that no matter what happened, she wouldn't walk alone. Her voice had sparked a revolution, proving that even in the darkest times, resilience and unity could light the way forward. For Maya Johnson, the journey was far from over, but now she walked it with hope restored and justice served.